Hi, and welcome to PTA Basics for All Leaders, a brief explanation of what we do and why we do it. My name is Maria Steck. I am the Vice President of Leadership Services for California State PTA, and I will be your presenter for this class. So, why PTA? Well, there's many reasons I tell people why PTA is so important and why it's an organization I think it's great for us to be involved in. Number one is our advocacy. We, as a group, fight on behalf of issues that affect children in the state of California as well as federally with our partners at National PTA. There is no greater voice than PTA. We are the nation's largest volunteer-led child advocacy association working on behalf of children. We've been doing this for over 120 years when our founding mothers, Alice Burney and Phoebe Hearst, brought this concept to California. We are also a membership organization. Membership increases our advocacy voice. It increases our ability to get messages and hit home with our congressmen and senators to let them know what it is that is important to the parents in our state. We are a family engagement organization. What does that mean? That means we believe in promoting families working together, working with their school, our school organizations doing things to promote our families coming together. A great example of our family engagement is our School Smarts program. We also have our Reflections program, which is an awesome arts program. If you are not doing that at your school, you definitely need to take a look at it. During this presentation, I'm going to talk a lot about support, how important it is to be a member of PTA. When you are a PTA, you never walk alone. You always have support of councils, of districts, and of the leaders at the California State PTA Board. We are all in it together, working to make sure that your unit, your school, is successful. What kind of resources do we have? Well, we have our website, and it is a pretty phenomenal website. It's capta.org. Definitely bookmark it if you are not already going to the site all the time, because there's a lot of things on there that you can look at, learn from, get resources from. It is a phenomenal place to go. Our toolkit is on our website. Our toolkit gives you guidelines on how to do things. Like if you're a unit treasurer and one of your board members asks for an advance to purchase materials that you need for an event that they're hosting, it will walk you through how to do that. It will give you examples of forms that we have. It'll give you examples of various things that you can do at your school for family engagement, for fundraising. So it's a wonderful resource. It also has information about our insurance program, our insurance guide. We have a tax filing workshop center there where you can get information about how to file your taxes, what needs to be filed, as well as a live person that you can email that will get back to you with answers to your questions. We have My PTEZ. It is a finance-based program. There are some free aspects of it where you can upload your roster information and important compliance documents. It also can do your accounting work. So it is a phenomenal program, one I definitely would suggest you check out if you don't already use it. We have access to our social media accounts. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are pretty interesting if you give us a chance. So let's talk about some basic PTA policies that all PTA nonprofits in the state, and a lot of times in the nation, need to follow. We are non-commercial. And what does that mean? It means that the PTA and the officers of the PTA identifying themselves as officers do not promote goods and services of a business, okay? I can tell you that my favorite pizza place is this pizza place, and I can tell you that as Maria, but I cannot tell you that as Maria, Vice President of Leadership for California State PTA, okay? When we do that, we start advertising for groups, and then that gets us into tricky situations with the Internal Revenue Service, because if we make money off of that, we are now having to pay taxes on that, and we don't want to have to do that. We are non-sectarian. What does that mean? It means we welcome membership from people representing a diversity of cultures, ethnic backgrounds, and political and religious beliefs. Creed, color, race, and economic status are irrelevant to the qualification for membership in our organization. Okay? We are hospitable to all, and we support no one religion or race over another. Try to make sure that your PTA board looks like what your school looks like. If you have a Hispanic population, make sure that they are represented on your board. And that includes any culture that you have on your board. Make everybody welcome. Make everybody feel like they want to be a part of your PTA. It's really important. And the last non-basic policy that we follow is being nonpartisan. What does that mean? That means that as a PTA, to retain our IRS tax-exempt status, we do not campaign on behalf or in opposition to any candidate for any public office. Okay? You may not use your PTA title. If you, in your personal life, endorse a school board candidate or a candidate for city council, you may not do that with your PTA moniker. You may do that. I can support somebody as Maria, the individual. I cannot support them as Maria, the vice president from California State PTA. Okay? That puts your nonprofit status in jeopardy, and you really don't want to do that. These rules are a lot more generated, not by California State PTA, but by the Internal Revenue Service and other organizations that really control our ability to be a nonprofit. So first up, we're going to talk about your bylaws, and I love that we call it your GPS. All of the important information about your PTA entity is going to be listed in there, okay? Your official name, all of your legal ID numbers, and that page here kind of shows you what that looks like, okay? How much your membership dues are, what your quorum numbers are for an executive board meeting and a general association meeting, who the officers of your association are, and most importantly, all the information about your nominating committee, when you elect officers, etc. So these are super important to have access to. Every member of your board is allowed to have a copy of, and should have a copy of, your bylaws. So everybody is familiar with what is going on and what they are supposed to be doing. Your bylaws also have something called standing rules. Those are at the end. Your standing rules are usually very specific to your school. So while they're a boilerplate form that you fill out for the most part, the fact that you have 4 vice presidents or 2 vice presidents is going to be listed here. When are you having your meeting dates? I don't mean you're going to go and, oh, we're going to have a meeting April 15th and May 12th. No, you're going to say that the second Tuesday of the month, you are having executive board meetings. And every third month on the 4th Tuesday, you're having an association meeting. That's the kind of stuff that is in your bylaws. Your check signers, your committees, standing versus special, and we will talk about those in a little bit. All that information is in there. If you have questions, if you go to update your bylaws, you have help from both your council and your district and California State PTA that can walk you through how to update your bylaws and your standing rules. So the deal on bylaws is you should review them every year. If you're a president, you should put together a group to review them. I always suggest an uneven amount, 3 to 5, because then if they're voting on something to bring to the board, you're not going to have a tie, okay? We also have a system called e-bylaws. If you're doing standard unit English-only bylaws, you can go in and do that on the computer. We also have fillable PDFs of the bylaws, both in English-only and an English-Spanish version. If you want help with e-bylaws, here is the URL. Keep in mind, if you don't remember all the rest of it, if you just remember capta.org and use the search bar once you get there, you can find anything that I am talking about in this presentation. So, PTA positions come in a variety of colors. Number one, some are required by nonprofit law and must be filled every year. That is president, treasurer, and secretary. There are some that are required by PTA. Your parliamentarian, your auditor, your historian, your principal, and your teacher rep. And just so you know, your principal and your teacher rep do not get elected every year like your actual board members do. Optional positions. You can have an executive vice president and a litany of other vice presidents, okay? You can have a vice president in charge of ways and means or fundraising. You can have a vice president in charge of membership. Those vice presidents can either be a vice president or they can be a committee chair. That's something that you and your PTA board would make a decision on. And then some optional positions you can have are financial secretary and corresponding secretary. Good if you have people that want to do those positions. The financial secretary obviously would help the treasurer. And the corresponding secretary can kind of be a jack of all trades who can help multiple people on the board. Once again, you need to check to see what your particular bylaws say regarding which of these positions you have. If you want additional information, we have job descriptions on the PTA website. So let's talk a little bit about the president. And I'm not going to read all of this slide to you. I'm sure you guys can. I'm sure you guys had access to the presentation. And if you didn't, definitely go to the convention site and see where they have put that at a later date so you can, download it and take a look at it. Some things that are really kind of important about this position of president is you do need to remember that you are the front face of your PTA, okay? You're the one who is going to be working with your principal. You are the one who's going to be discussing things. And, if you have a meeting, you're the one who's up there giving information to your parents, okay? So you want to be out there. You want everybody to know who you are. Some things you also need to know from a legal standpoint. You are an authorized check signer. It does not mean you have to sign every check, but you are an authorized check signer, and we always have 2 check signers sign every check. You also need to sign every contract, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you are one of the 2 people that needs to sign a contract. Something that's confusing to people is we say that you're an ex officio member of all committees. What does that mean? That means every committee that is formed, a budget committee, a fundraising committee, the jogathon committee, the reflections committee, you are a member of that committee whether you attend the meetings or not. Okay, it's entirely up to you, but you are a person who is on that committee. The one committee you are not allowed to be a part of and you are to have no contact with is the nominating committee. Okay, you are not a part of that committee. You do not go to those meetings. That is supposed to be a confidential committee that you are not involved in. So if somebody says be a part of that one, tell them no, you cannot. It is in our bylaws. Something that you also need to keep in mind is when a board election is held, check signers cannot be related by blood, marriage, or live in the same household, okay, as any other check signer. So in everybody's bylaws and standing rules, the treasurer and the secretary are the first 2 positions that are check signers. Other people can be picked, other vice presidents, if you have a financial secretary, if you have an executive vice president. But none of those check signers can be related to one another by blood, marriage, or live in the same household. So we talked a little bit about executive vice president, okay? I sometimes tell people that is the helper to the president. It does not mean that you are the next president. At unit, council, and district, that's not how it works, okay? This is not president-elect. This is an executive vice president on the board to help do things, okay? I would suggest if you have an executive vice president and you do not have it written out as to what that person does, I would say it's very important for the president and the executive vice president to sit down and come up with some clearly defined rules and guidelines of what each is going to be in charge of. Because if you don't, you might confuse your board, and you might also confuse one another and others who are trying to do things with the PTA. Your treasurer, that is a required position. Your treasurer is in charge of collecting money, of paying bills, of getting things authorized, putting reports together, making sure that tax returns are completed. It's an important position, okay? Don't tell somebody, oh, all you do is write a couple checks a month. That's not what a treasurer does, okay? It is an exceptionally important position. You need to make sure that the person who is going to be treasurer understands how important it is to take care of the PTA money. Nothing is more important than taking care of the PTA money and the PTA reputation. Reputation is everybody's responsibility. Taking care of the money is also everyone's responsibility, but the treasurer is usually the one who is most hands-on with it, as opposed to just looking at the budget and making sure that things are being, money's being spent wisely and not foolishly. Financial secretary is an optional position, and very much like the executive vice president, is a position that if you're going to have it, there is a job description, but it's another position where it's important that the treasurer and the financial secretary understand who is doing what, so there is clear-cut paths that each person is taken. That will help you with conflict later on. It will also help with confusion of the board. If the financial secretary is the one who's responsible for making all deposits, then you're probably going to want to notify the financial secretary if you have an event and money needs to be deposited, as opposed to telling the treasurer, go to the person who's actually in charge of it so they know where it's locked up, etc., etc. So like I said, it's a great position to have, but make sure the two people who are in the treasurer and the financial secretary position are speaking to one another and they have outlined their duties. Secretary, once again, this is a recording secretary and it is a required position, okay? This person is going to obviously take minutes at all the meetings. As with any board member, if your secretary cannot make a meeting, it is okay to appoint someone else in that person's place to take minutes at a meeting, okay? The secretary is signs all of the payment authorization forms. They sign resolutions and formal letters, okay? It's important that you know that a secretary can never be a check signer because when the secretary reviews the check request forms, she's kind of looking at it as another set of eyes to make sure that there's no funny business going on with checks that are being written. So it's really important to make sure she's not, or he's not, a part of the check signing process. It's important that the secretary keep very good notes, preserve the records. Any reports that are filed during a meeting, there should be copies in her book. She should have a copy of, or he should have a copy of the bylaws and standing rules, okay? Your secretary should have a list of members, not only your membership person, but your secretary should as well, to help in case there's a contested election, so you know who actually is a member of your PTA and who is not. Your parliamentarian is not required, but it is highly recommended. Your parliamentarian is kind of like your referee at your meeting. Your parliamentarian should sit close to you at a meeting, like to your right or your left. I know when I have been a unit president and a district president, it was really helpful because if we were in the middle of discussing something, my parliamentarian would jot down notes about what was going on, who was the next person to speak. If we were in the middle of something, it's very easy to have a discussion and then forget to actually go to the vote. So really important position. It's usually appointed, not elected. So it can be somebody, that you as a president talk to and say, hey, I'd like you to do this. Parliamentarian has two big jobs. She or he arranges the nominating committee. They get the first meeting started. They have the option of being a part of the nominating committee as long as they did not do it the previous nominating committee, because you cannot serve nominating committee more than, once. You can't do it, twice in a row. You have to take a year off if you want to do it again. And they also chair the bylaws review committee, okay? And if there are changes that are going to be made, the parliamentarian is in charge of getting them together and taking it to the board, getting it up through channels, approved, and then taking it back to the association for approval. Next up is auditor. In your bylaws, it's going to tell you if your auditor is elected or appointed. Your auditor goes in and reviews the financial records of the PTA twice a year, okay, at a minimum. If there's a change in treasurers, then they would also go ahead and do an audit, but twice a year you are required to do an audit according to our bylaws. So California State PTA requires it, and our insurance carrier requires that the bylaws or the books are reviewed twice a year so that we know that financial procedures are being followed. Auditor cannot be the previous treasurer and reviewing his or her own books, so keep that in mind. And they cannot be related by blood, marriage, or live in the same household as any of the check signers, okay? So really important to pay attention to that. And your auditor can also not be a check signer. So here's a little talk about audits. A mini audit should happen every month. Okay, what that means is a non-check signer should open the bank statement and look at it to make sure that there's no irregularities. Okay, is somebody charging clothes to Macy's, which you shouldn't have a debit card or a credit card in the PTA name anyway, but let's say your PTA has made a mistake and they got a debit card, you should be careful what you're seeing on that. So if you are an auditor at a school, or you're asked to review the bank statement, you're looking for things like were there electronic payments made and who are they made to, okay? Is someone making their car payment instead of paying, PTA bills like to your council or district for your membership dues, etc., okay? And when they look at it, they are supposed to sign off and date it that they have looked at it so that if, heaven help you, you have an embezzlement issue, when the insurance company asks you who's been reviewing the records, you can show them your bank statements have been signed off by a non-check signer. Once again, this should happen every month. Then, like I said, you have 2 audits a year, mid-year and end of year. The majority of the PTAs in California are on a fiscal year that starts July 1st and ends June 30th. So your mid-year audit would go from July 1st to December 31st, and your end-of-year audit would go from January 1st until June 30th, okay? And there is a process on how to get these done. What's going to happen is the auditor is going to review all of the financial records. They're going to look at the bank statements. They're going to look at the checks that were written, the payment authorization forms, the cash verification forms, just to make sure that things are being done properly. They're not looking to point a finger and say, oh, you're not right, you didn't do something. No, they're just there to take a look at what's happening and make sure that we are being financially and fiduciarily responsible, okay? There is a whole section on our website about audits. I would suggest definitely taking a look at that. We also have an audit class that's being presented during convention, and I would definitely suggest taking a look at that. Audits are not difficult. There are some nuances to an audit because if you are not a qualified CPA, you do need to have someone, an audit review committee, review that. And so like I said, I definitely suggest you take a look at the audit presentation and go to our website and take a look at what they say there. Historian, once again, this is an optional position, okay? At an elementary school, this person might run around taking pictures and help with the yearbook. A lot of elementary schools put the yearbook together. They also might be someone who posts pictures on social media or at your school to make sure that everybody sees what it is that the PTA is doing. They also collect volunteer hours throughout the year so that they can fill out your annual historian report that tells the unit council or the district and eventually California State PTA, how many hours your parents put in as PTA volunteers at your school site. So once again, not a required position, but a good position to have if someone needs it or wants to be on the PTA but can't do a lot. So let's talk about vice presidents or standing committee positions. Any of these positions listed here can be a vice president or they can be a standing committee. A standing committee is a committee that works all year long, okay? As opposed to we have something called an ad hoc committee, which only has a specific purpose. They have one job that they're doing, and they may not be meeting all year, okay? So important to know, check your bylaws. It could be that your fundraising ways of mean person is a vice president. You've got somebody in mind, but they don't want the title vice president. They want to be called committee chair, fundraising committee chair. So take a look at that. It's easy to change in your bylaws and your standing rules. And if you have questions about these positions, we also have job descriptions on our website. So as we've been going along, I've talked a little bit about elected positions and ones that are optional, ones that are not, that are required. So who gets elected every year? Every year. Your president, your executive vice president if you have one, any vice presidents you have, your secretary, your treasurer, your financial secretary if you have one, and your historian, okay? Who's appointed by the president and then ratified by the board? Parliamentarian, corresponding, any of your committee chairs. Your principal and your teacher rep are not elected or appointed, they simply are, okay? By the nature of the fact that they're a teacher and that they're the principal, they are on your board. And then with your bylaws, you need to check to see how the auditor is put together. If they're appointed or they're elected. Please remember that all members of the executive board have full voting privileges. I frequently hear, well, we didn't elect the principal, so she shouldn't get to vote. Yes, your principal gets to vote, period, end of story, no discussion. They are a member of the board. So, conflict of interest policy. The IRS made this a requirement many years ago from nonprofits that they needed to put together a policy so that people understood that them being on a board, a nonprofit board, did not mean that they automatically got special perks. So that's basically what this form tells you, is that you do not get paid to be on your nonprofit board and you do not get special treatment. If you have a restaurant and you are the PTA vice president of membership at a unit and they do restaurant nights, it would not look good if every restaurant night is done at your particular restaurant, okay? There should be, it should be spread out. It could appear to people that because you own that restaurant, you are being given special treatment and they're not going to anybody else. So you definitely need to look at that, and everybody needs to fill one out for every PTA board that they sit on. So if you sit on 2 or 3 PTA boards, every single board you should fill this form out at. Let's talk about the operations of the PTA, okay? We have different kinds of meetings. We have committee meetings, executive board meetings, and association or general meetings, okay? Each one caters to a different set of people. Sometimes they overlap, so we'll talk about that in a minute. What needs to happen at each of these meetings? You need minutes. You need to make sure you have a quorum. If there are motions made, they need to be noted in the minutes and whether they passed or failed. And if you're at an executive board meeting or an association meeting, budget information and expenses. Committee meeting, you need to know what your budget is. So you need to know all of this kind of information. At an election meeting, when you elect your new officers for the year, you want to make sure that after you've held the election, you also get a motion in there that lists who the check signers are on your bank account, okay? And remember that whenever the secretary at all of these meetings takes notes, the minutes need to be approved at the next meeting. So if you have a general association meeting every 3 months, The minutes from the meeting prior should be approved. You have executive board meetings every month. Those minutes should be approved every month. Obviously, things happen. So one month, if you have to approve two, that's fine. But just keep in mind that the minutes need to be approved by the group at the next meeting. Okay? Committee meetings. We've talked about this. The president is available to go to any meeting except nominating committee, the chair of the committee, and then the members. Okay? You meet as necessary. It doesn't mean that you have to meet every day. It doesn't mean you have to meet once a week. Maybe you're doing a jogathon and you have, a meeting 3 months out, you're meeting once every 2 weeks, and then as it gets closer to the event, you're meeting weekly. That's something you guys are going to have to discuss. A quorum would be the majority of the committee members. If your committee has 15 people on it, then your quorum is probably going to, you're going to want to look at 7 or 8. You should not have a committee meeting and have 3 of you there making all the decisions if there's, like I said, 15 people on the committee. What you're supposed to do in committee meetings is do the preliminary work, okay? Where are you going to bring in food if you're having a family event and you're going to feed people? What color scheme are you using? Are you going to have centerpieces and balloons? These are all the things that should just come to the executive board meeting in a report, okay? We're going to do this, 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 and this, and have the executive board ask questions, okay? But it is not necessarily a good idea to sit there and have a 45-minute discussion at an executive board meeting whether or not you should have purple or red balloons. And I kid you not, I was at a meeting once that they did that. It takes away from your volunteers knowing that you value their time and the fact that, yes, in fact, they have other things that they may need to do with their day. So great way to get things done. Bring a report. You can type it up and then just send it out to everybody. And then get the important things like what you're spending money on approved by the executive board, releasing the funds with the executive board, things like that. Fundraising committee. That is the group that's going to be doing, some places call it Ways and Means. This is the group that is going to raise money for your PTA. Okay? If you are a fundraising vice president or the committee chair, or you're taking on a particular aspect of fundraising, like maybe you do a jogathon and it falls to a committee chair as opposed to the vice president of fundraising, take a look at what they've done previously. Okay? I know procedure books are a thing of the past, but they really shouldn't be, because it's really important to see and learn what people before you have done. If you've reached out to your school community and asked them to be on the committee, you want to talk to them. You want to say, hey, it's me. I'm the chair of this committee and I want to get together. I want to get to know all of you. If your event is at the end of the school year and you got these names at the beginning of the school year, reach out to them before the end of the school year, because they're going to think you don't want any help and they might be a little disgruntled because you haven't approached them earlier. So definitely reach out. Look at what you're doing and see if people can take chunks of the event. If you're having an event, you're having food, maybe somebody can be in charge of the food. Maybe somebody else can be in charge of finding more volunteers. So definitely look at how to lay that out. Don't guilt people or voluntold somebody to do something. Ask people, because if it's their wheelhouse, they're going to be great at it. If, on the other hand, you voluntold somebody to do something and it's not something they're comfortable doing, it might not get done, or it might get done to the point where it's not really a good fit for what you're doing. Like I said, put reports forward to the executive board. They need to know what you're doing. You do not work in a silo as a committee chair. And last but not least, we've talked a little bit about contracts, how the president is a check signer. The other signer of a contract needs to be another elected officer. And it's really important that you sign it the way that I have listed here. The name of your PTA by your name, president, and then the term that you're in. So if you're doing it for the upcoming term, you're going to be 21-22. That way you've put the responsibility of the contract on your PTA, not on you personally. Executive board meetings, super important. They are supposed to happen monthly. Check your bylaws to see when they happen during the month, okay? They are open to all of your elected officers, your committee chairs, your teacher rep, and your principal. Your principal has the opportunity to send someone in his or her place, okay? Maybe they can't make it. Maybe the assistant principal can come, a dean, whatever the case may be, okay? You can grant people a courtesy seat to come to the meeting that is done by the president. They don't necessarily get to vote on anything. It might be that these are new parents to your school. They want to see about your PTA. You know, you need to really look at who wants a courtesy seat and the purpose behind it. What other kind of things do you do in an executive board meeting? You fill vacancies if there are any on your board. You appoint your chair people. You are going to look at budgets and, review the budget, make recommendations. You're going to approve the audit. You're going to deal with your bylaws, and you're going to help plan what's going on at your general association meetings. Which brings up our next meeting. Your association or general meetings happen less often. In a lot of cases, it may be you're having 3 or 4 of those a year. You don't really need to have one every month. It gets a bit much if you have to have 2 meetings a month to do everything, okay? I suggest a minimum of 4 per year of association meetings. It is open to all members of your PTA, but and their guests. I mean, if you have a family who's there and they're not PTA members, they can come to the association meeting. They're just not allowed to vote, okay? You need to check to see when they are, and that's going to be in your standing rules or your bylaws, okay? You're going to want to let everybody know what you're talking about at the beginning of the year, usually at back to school night maybe. You're going to approve your calendar, your programs, your fundraisers. You're going to let your school population see a copy of your budget, what you want to raise money for, how you want to spend it. You're going to release funds. You're going to ratify your expenses. You're going to, if you do bylaws changes, you're going to get those approved by your association. Your association also needs to elect the nominating committee, and they are one of these meetings usually in March, beginning of April. It needs to happen. That's where you're going to have your election meeting, okay? And that is in usually March or April, but check your bylaws to see what that says. What kind of things are you going to do? This is kind of a sample agenda of what you would have happen at your association meeting. You want to make sure that after you call it to order, say I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:02, we have a quorum. You're going to do a Pledge of Allegiance if you're on school district property, really important. You're going to go and do a lot of the same things that you do in an executive board meeting, okay? You approve the minutes, the financial reports, your audits when those are done twice a year. You're going to talk about bills. If there are reports, like if you have a big fundraiser going on, you're probably going to want to remind your parents about that, okay? There could be a committee that wants parents to know what's coming up. All of this type of information should be in there. You need to figure out if your parents are going to sit for a 3-hour association meeting or they like them to be short and sweet. But as long as you get, especially the top portion of this done, your minute approval, your financial reports, your audit report, things along those lines, as long as those all get done, you're good to go. If a committee doesn't make a report in an association meeting, as long as you're letting your parents know, as committees don't work in silos and vice presidents don't work in silos, the PTA as a whole does not work in a silo. They need to work and they need to be transparent with the parents who support them. Membership, super big, important thing in PTA. Okay, we are a membership-driven organization. So what do you need to know about membership if you're a chair? Create a theme, okay? That's really a great thing to do at an elementary school because everybody loves a theme and loves to try to, raise the bar for where you're going. And we've got great ideas on our California State PTA website of ideas that you can use for a theme, okay? You can have competitions. You can have prizes. School-wide goal. I like those better than individual incentives, but it's up to you. Make sure whatever you're going to do that you have funds in the budget. Okay, you can't spend money unless it's budgeted, so make sure you do that. If you go to the California State PTA website, we have a lot of great resources there. Okay, we've got fillable forms that you can use and put information about your school. I think the most important thing that you need to remember is when you're doing a membership campaign, you really need to educate your parents as to what it is that California or the PTA at your school does for the school. Many families have no clue, and they are actually very surprised when they find out. So, a few little reminders here. Big things to remember is anyone can join PTA. It is a year-long membership drive. You don't just collect membership in August and September. If people want to join in November and December or February, absolutely do it, okay? Make people understand that joining the PTA is not the only way they can volunteer, okay? They can be a member and they don't have to ever volunteer for anything. They don't have to come to a meeting. You'd like them to, but it doesn't mean that they have to, okay? If you are not on Totem, I would definitely, that is our electronic membership system, I would definitely suggest taking a look. It is an awesome program. Your supporters can actually join your PTA online, and it makes part of the work on your part easier. I would also suggest, though, that you do membership the old-fashioned way with a piece of paper, a check, or cash. So let's talk a little bit about the legal aspects of PTA and why it's important that we're compliant. A PTA board's fiduciary responsibility is to ensure that all financial procedures are followed, okay? And this is all PTA board members. It is not just the treasurer or the president, okay? What are your responsibility as a PTA board member? You need to protect the assets of the organization. You need to make sure the organization is being compliant. You need to serve your beneficiaries, which are your students and your families at the school. And you want to make sure that there's continuity in the PTA and transparency, okay? You want to always be bringing in new families, new board members, so that the PTA can continue to grow and be an awesome force on the campus of your school. What does it mean to be a PTA in what we call good standing? So you need to have at least 15 members, okay? If you are a board member, you need to be a member of the PTA, okay? So president, secretary, treasurer, any of your committee chairs, any of your vice presidents, your auditor, whoever, they all should be members of your PTA, okay? You should encourage your teachers, your principal. You should encourage everybody to support the PTA at your school, okay? Your bylaws need to be not more than 5 years old. Your insurance premium needs to be paid through channels in the November-December timeframe. Your workers' comp form needs to be filled out by January. It can't be filled out in September. It needs to be filled out closer to January. You need to make sure your taxes are filed. The IRS, the Franchise Tax Board. You need to make sure that you have done something called your Charitable Trust Renewal Form. That is the RRF1. And then recently there has been a new form added. That's the CTTR1 with the Attorney General. It files with the RRF1. There are certain requirements behind it. So I would definitely encourage you to check the California State PTA website, our tax filing support area, and see what they tell you about how to get this done. We have annotated forms there and definitions of what has to be filed by who and when. What kind of financial reports are you guys responsible for? A budget, an annual financial report, treasurer's reports, budget to actual, taxes, audits, raffle application, and report if you're going to do raffles. I'd like to say this is something that can be split amongst other people, but there's two people who are seriously going to be knee-deep in all of this. That is your treasurer and your auditor. So keep that in mind, okay? So now we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these forms because they're critical to you staying in good standing. What is your budget? It is your income and expenditures for the fiscal year, okay? It is a living document, so it can be reviewed and dealt with on a regular basis, okay? Make sure it's goals-based. What do I mean by that? You have goals. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to bring to the school, okay? It shouldn't just be, let's fundraise and make a lot of money because we want to. That should never be the point of your budget, okay? Usually you put the budget together in the spring for the next school year. You can approve it at your last association meeting of the school year and then approve it once again at the beginning, the very first association meeting of the school year. Review it often, okay? The treasurer should be putting together a budget to actual every, at least once a quarter, to make everybody see how much money's coming in, how much money's going out. If you need to evaluate, evaluate. Very, very, very important. Monitor the budget. It's the entire board's responsibility. If there's a program and it's getting dangerously close to the amount of money that you have budgeted, you may want to say, hey guys, we need to look at this. We're spending too much money here. We made more money at this fundraiser than we thought. What are we going to spend it on? You have the ability to spend unbudgeted money between association meetings. It depends on how many you have. That information is in your bylaws. But, look at it. And if you're seeing, you're not making as much money as you need to, or you're making too much money and you need to spend it a different way, make sure that you have a meeting and review that. And that is the responsibility of the treasurer. Annual financial report is an IRS requirement. It is a very fancy name for basically a budget to actual report. Okay, that's what it is. It is should be compiled after the end of the fiscal year. So if we use my primary example of July to June, that means sometime in July for the previous year that ended June 30th, you should be able to put together your annual financial report, and you're going to upload it in our wonderful finance program, My PTEZ. Treasurer's reports. They should be produced at every meeting. Can a treasurer forget one month? Of course they can. Okay, people have lives, but please do not have a treasurer's report not produced for an extended period of time, because it's a red flag, and a lot of people would be suspicious about why that is happening. Okay, the treasurer's report needs to tell you what time period it's covering, what the beginning balance is, all the activity, and what the ending balance is, okay? You need to tell people who received money, okay? What budget on the line item, what line item on budget it went to, okay? Same as received applies for money that is received. If you got a bunch of checks and they are for 4 different things, and there should be 4 different listings of where that money went, okay? And if you need an example of what a treasurer's report looks like, you definitely can go to our website and you can see that. Audits, we've talked a little bit about already. Once again, get them done twice a year. Super important, because not only do we require them, but our insurance company requires them. And if you have a loss, you could wind up causing yourself some problems if you have not done your audits. So definitely get those done. Taxes need to be filed 4 months and 15 days after your fiscal year, okay? Depending on how much money you made, you're either going to be filing 3 or 4 different forms, okay? You've got to do one to the IRS, one to the Franchise Tax Board, and either 1 or 2 to the Attorney General's office, okay? One applies to everybody. The second one, which is the CTTR1, only applies if you made under $50,000 or under, okay? So now let's go over this a little bit. You've got the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. Everybody says it's really silly. We have to file these taxes. It doesn't matter. It's a requirement of being a nonprofit, so you need to do it. If you do $50,000 or under, you get to do the N, which is the postcard. If you do more than $50,000, up to $200,000, you can do the 990 EZ, and over $200,000, you have to do a full 990. My recommendation, as is the recommendation of the Finance Committee of California State PTA, hire an accountant if you need to file a full return. And remember Schedule A. A lot of schools forget to do that, and then the IRS hits them with a letter, hey, you didn't do this. Oh, and hey, guess what? You're not going to get hit with penalties and interest. Franchise Tax Board, very similar, they only have 2 options. You're either doing under $50,000 for the postcard, $50,000 and over, or $50,001, I should say, is the regular $199. Once again, don't play games, get it filed, because taxes, penalties, and interest are not fun. The Attorney General, the RF1, is the renewal. It is the form everybody has to fill out, okay? Some mistakes people make on there is that they forget to put down what their assets are. Your assets are the amount of money in your bank account. So don't forget to put that down there. Annotated forms are available on our website. The CTTR1, like I said, is brand new. It came up this year, and you only need to file that if you do the postcard filing. But don't forget to file it because they could reject your RF1 and put you in a delinquent status if you don't file it. Raffle permit, okay, only if you're having a raffle. We talk in depth about raffles and the permit and reporting process in our fundraising class. Just understand that if you are going to have a raffle, that means people are paying money to get a chance to win something. It is considered a raffle. You need a report. Okay, you need a permit. You need to file a report in the October after the year that you did the raffle. This raffle reporting system does not go on any year that makes any sense to anybody. The process starts in September. So if you're going to get a raffle permit, I would suggest filing for that the very beginning of September, and it goes until the next August. Financial approvals, procedures, really important. We always practice transparency. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We do not work in a silo. It's super important you remember that. Items that need to be presented at the First Association meeting are listed here. Basically, the reason for that is you want your parents and the supporters of your association to know what you're spending money on and how you're spending money, okay? They're more likely to support if they understand what they're doing as opposed to being kept in the dark. Money handling, really, really, really important. Pertains to cash as well as checks. Make sure you never leave money unattended. Make sure that you have money secured after an event. I don't ever tell anybody go put money in a Dropbox at dark, but remember it needs to be locked up in a secure locking mechanism like a safe, okay? Make sure when you count money that you count it in a secure location. Make sure the cash verification form is filled out. If you don't have one of those, use a regular piece of paper. You can do that, but you want to make sure that two people have counted it, that they have signed it. They cannot be related, as we've talked before, by blood marriage or living in the same household. Exceptionally important, okay? And I would always suggest if you're a counter, take a picture of what you counted so you know what you said at the end of the night. Payment authorizations, reimbursements, and advances, okay? You should never reimburse anybody without paperwork. You should never take money without paperwork, okay? You need to know, if you are the treasurer or the financial secretary, you need to know where this money is coming from or where it needs to go to. What was the money spent on, okay? You need to know. We don't pay things out without receipts, okay? So make sure that you're following all that, okay? Payment authorizations are always signed by the president and the secretary and the person who's requesting it. And understand, we are allowed to give cash advances, okay? There are guidelines in the California State PTA Toolkit. I would suggest reviewing them, but understand people should not be made to feel bad if they need to request a cash advance to do something for the PTA. The expenditure process, okay? You need to get the budget approved. The approving the budget does not mean it's okay to go spend money, okay? You then, after you, if you're a committee chair, you need, after the budget's approved, you need to go to the executive board, you need to tell them what you want to do, and then you need to release the money to spend it, okay? Then you need to turn in the expenditures so that they can see that what you said you were spending money on, you actually spent the money on, and you are within budget. Do not ever spend money over the budgeted amount that you have been given, because it is not a guarantee that you are going to get that money back. The board does not have to pay you back. What you need to do is, if you need more money, you need to make a case with the executive board and see if they will up the budget for your program that you are doing. Letters of determination. This is the legal proof that you are a nonprofit, okay? If you need one, A lot of times if you try to get donations, people are going to ask to see this letter of determination. You can order one by going to the tax filing center, and there'll be a link in there, and you can go ahead, give them your name and your address and your school name, etc., and then they will go ahead and let you know if you're eligible for one and get that out to you. We've talked briefly about insurance. Your insurance premium is determined in around August or September. You'll get a mailing at your legal address that we have in My PTEZ. That will tell you, how much the premium is. The mailer will also give you a copy of the brand new insurance guide. If you don't have an insurance guide right now and the new one's not coming out for several months, you can go to our website and get a copy. It is exceptionally useful, and everybody should have access to it. Your fundraising people, your programs people, everybody. Okay? What does our insurance cover? Well, in the loss prevention guide, it'll tell you. It gives you proof of insurance. There's claim forms in there. It will tell you the various types of coverage we have: accident, theft, director, and officer. And it also will give you a list of activities that are okay for the PTA to sponsor, and a list of activities that would not be the best thing for you guys to think about. Workers' comp form, we've also talked about a little bit in the past. It needs to be filled out every January by every PTA entity in the state. Okay, it is required. There is a new process where you get to go in and file the report electronically. It is awesome. I cannot believe it took us this long to get there, but kudos and a giant shout out to our insurance carrier, AIM. They have done this, and it is phenomenal. If you haven't done it yet, when you do it this coming year, you're going to love it. Once again, a copy of this form should be uploaded into My PTEZ because it is a compliance issue. So we covered a lot of things today. I'm going to encourage you to check the convention schedule. We're going to have several Q&A times during convention where you can come in and ask us questions. This presentation will be available through the end of June if you need to watch it again. If you have any questions and you don't think you're going to make it to one of our live Q&A sessions, you can always email us at leadership@capta.org. We can then go in, we can give you an answer. But remember, if you're watching this during convention week, we're going to be kind of busy. And it may take us a few days to get back to you. But like I said, any questions you have, parliamentary-wise, finance-wise, send it to that email address and we will get back to you. Last but not least, I want to thank you for joining us. The fact that you spent the last hour with us learning about PTA and why it's so important and why it's so great to have a PTA at your location speaks mountains about your dedication to your children's school and to the organization and all the great things that can happen. So once again, I hope you all have a great convention. Thank you for spending time with us. My name is Maria Steck, and I'm out.